There are words, when spoken by those we love, that cut deeper than any blade. I was 67 years old when I heard my only daughter, Amanda, whisper to her husband in the kitchen that I was nothing but a burden in their lives. It was a Sunday night, and they thought I was asleep in the guest room where I had been staying for 8 months, ever since I sold my house to help them financially. That whisper, just one sentence, "I can't take this burden anymore," changed everything. That night, lying in a bed that wasn't mine, in a room that held nothing of me except a few neatly folded clothes in the closet, I let the tears roll silently down my face. I didn't cry out loud. I had learned through a lifetime that the deepest pain is the one that silences us. The quiet of betrayal is louder than any noise. Every mother believes her sacrifices will be remembered, the sleepless nights, the years of working double shifts after my husband, Richard, passed away, the lifetime of savings I gave for my daughter's wedding, the down payment on her house, the medical bills for her husband when he lost his job. I thought it would all mean something. But in that elegant kitchen my money had helped furnish, I was only a burden. The next morning, I pretended I hadn't heard anything. Amanda smiled as she handed me a cup of coffee, her smile as artificial as the plastic flowers she insisted on keeping in the living room. "Did you sleep well, Mom?" I nodded, swallowing not just the coffee but also the lump in my throat. I had made up my mind during the night, counting each minute on the digital clock by the bed. "I need to take care of some things at the bank today," I said casually. My daughter barely looked up from her phone, probably planning another renovation they couldn't afford but would do anyway. "Do you want me to go with you?" she asked without lifting her eyes from the screen. That false concern hurt more than indifference. "No, dear, I can. Manage on my own." What Amanda didn't know was that I still had a secret. When I sold my house 8 months earlier, I hadn't given them all the money as they believed. I had kept a small portion hidden away in an account no one knew about. Not much, but enough for what I was planning. That Monday morning was unusually cold. I put on my old wool coat, Richard's gift for our 20th wedding anniversary. He always had such good taste. Even when money was tight, that coat made me feel safe, as if he were still beside me, giving me strength. On the bus, I stared out the window. How things had changed. The street where Richard and I once walked on Sundays was now lined with impersonal high-rises. The bakery where we used to buy fresh bread had become a fast food chain. Time sweeps away places, people, feelings, but some wounds stay raw as if they happened yesterday. I remembered Amanda as a little girl, running through the house in her colorful dresses, begging me for one more bedtime story. The child who once promised to take care of me when I grew old had become a cold, calculating woman who saw her own mother as a burden. I got off the bus 2 stops early. I needed to walk to clear my head. Passing through a park, I saw elderly men playing chess, chatting on benches, feeding pigeons. Perhaps in Amanda's eyes, that's where I belonged, just another old woman waiting out her days. That afternoon, I didn't go to the bank. I went instead to the office of James Miller, a longtime friend and attorney who had handled Richard's affairs for years. His office was on the 11th floor of a downtown building. Sitting in the waiting room, I felt both anxious and determined. When the secretary called my name, I took a deep breath and walked in. James looked just as I remembered: silver hair neatly combed, thin-rimmed glasses, a calm expression. He rose, came around the desk, and hugged me. "Teresa, it's been so long. How are you?" The genuine joy in his voice made me realize how long it had been since anyone had truly seen me, truly listened. "I'm surviving, James." I tried to smile, but my lips trembled. He immediately sensed something was wrong. James had always been perceptive, that's what made him a good lawyer. He gestured for me to sit, leaning forward slightly. What happened? How long has it been since Richard passed? 5 years, 2 months, and 17 days, I answered precisely. He looked startled at my exactness. I told James everything, without tears or drama, that I had sold my house to help Amanda and her husband David, that I had moved into their guest room, and that last night I heard my own daughter call me a burden. He looked over his glasses, eyes filled with both pity and admiration. So what do you plan to do, Teresa? I want to change my will, and I need your help with a few other matters. Are you sure? This is a serious decision. I'm 67 years old, James. I've spent my whole life making serious decisions on my own. He nodded and began drafting the documents. My heart was calm. There is a strange peace that comes when you finally decide to change the course of your life. While he worked, I glanced at the photographs on his shelf. James and his wife, Linda, in different stages of life. Their children growing up, graduating, marrying, grandchildren arriving. A life well lived, captured in happy images. I smiled, asking, "How are your kids?" "All doing well. Andrew opened his own law firm. Rebecca is pursuing her doctorate in Germany. And the youngest, Daniel, just gave me my 3rd grandchild. Do they call? Visit often?" "Almost every week. Christmas, New Year's, birthdays, we're always together." I turned away, swallowing hard. Just curious. He understood what I didn't say. James set down his pen, leaned back. "Teresa, I've known you for decades. You and Richard have always been examples of integrity, hard work, family love. If you're here today, I know you have good reason. I'll do everything I can to help." Those kind words nearly broke me. How long had it been since anyone recognized my sacrifices, my dignity? I nodded, grateful for the respect I saw in his eyes. In the weeks that followed, I kept my daily routine, cooking, listening to Amanda complain about work, traffic, neighbors. David barely spoke to me, always busy at his computer, what he called networking, though in truth it was just games and shows. I was like a ghost in that house, washing dishes, folding laundry, invisible. One evening, Amanda said, "Mom, we're thinking of changing the living room sofas. What do you think?" "But didn't you buy those just last year?" She rolled her eyes. "Yes, but they don't match the new style we're planning. We want something minimalist, modern." David chimed in. "Don't worry, I've got some investments about to pay off." I bit back my doubts and simply said, "I understand. It's your house, your decision." "Exactly," Amanda replied flatly. Those 3 words, your house, echoed in my mind the rest of the night. I was an outsider. That's why in the afternoons, when I told them I was walking in the park as the doctor recommended, I was actually searching for a new place to live. I visited 5 apartments before finding the perfect little studio. It wasn't luxurious, but it had a balcony where I could grow basil and rosemary, just as I had always dreamed. I signed the lease without hesitation. The realtor, a kind man named Joseph, looked surprised to see a woman in her 60s renting alone. "Are you sure, ma'am? Don't you have family who could?" "I'm sure, Mr. Joseph. Yes, I have family. But sometimes the loneliness you feel while surrounded by others hurts more than being truly alone." He nodded knowingly. "I understand. My mother went through something similar. Those turned out to be the happiest years of her life." I smiled, imagining mornings without Amanda's impatient sighs or David's judgmental glances. The next step was harder, calling my younger sister Regina, whom I hadn't spoken to in nearly 3 years over a petty inheritance dispute. Time sometimes hardens us, making us hold on to grudges like useless objects shoved into a drawer. When she picked up, my voice trembled. "Regina, it's me, Teresa." Silence. I thought she might hang up. Then, a long sigh. "It's about time you called, sister." There was no anger in her voice, only soft melancholy. We talked for nearly 2 hours. We cried, remembering our childhood, our parents, Christmases that now seemed so far away. I told her about Amanda, about the plan I was quietly putting in place. Regina listened without judgment. "Do you remember when Mom was widowed? Everyone expected her to fade away, to live forever in Dad's shadow. But she surprised us. She traveled, made new friends, learned to paint." I smiled at the memory. My mother, Amelia, widowed at 58, had reinvented herself in ways no one thought possible. She passed away at 86, leaving behind dozens of colorful canvases and a travel journal filled with adventures many young people wouldn't dare attempt. "You've always been the strong one, Teresa," Regina said, "even when you seemed fragile. I don't feel strong now, but you are. You're making decisions, planning your future, refusing to let yourself be diminished. That is strength." After the call, I thought about my mother, about how she had shattered everyone's expectations. Maybe it was in my blood, the ability to rise when the world expected me to fall. It was Regina who introduced me to Mrs. Zulma, a 78-year-old widow living in a large house by the coast, 3 hours from the city. She was looking for a companion to share expenses. A week later, I was sipping tea on her porch, gazing at the sea in the distance, and for the first time in a long while, I felt I still had choices. Zulma welcomed me as if we had known each other forever. She was tall and slender, her white hair dyed a soft lavender shade, wearing a floral dress and a stack of bangles that jingled when she moved. After pouring me mint tea from her own garden, she said, "Regina told me your story. I'm sorry for what you've gone through." "Thank you, but I don't need pity, Zulma. I just want to know if your offer to share this house is truly sincere." She smiled, her blue eyes shining with surprising vitality. "More sincere than anything, my dear. In fact, it's a little selfish. I need companionship just as much as you need a new home." Then she added with a playful grin, "Regina said you're a wonderful cook. Have you thought about all the recipes we could share?" I laughed, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders. "I make an orange cake that will stay in your memory. And I make a roasted fish with herbs so good you'll forget every worry." Suddenly she grew serious. "Teresa, I lost my husband 12 years ago. My children live far away, one in California, another all the way in Australia. I have grandchildren I rarely see. At first I drowned in self-pity, waiting for them to rescue me from loneliness. Then I realized only I could rescue myself. And how did you do that?" "One day at a time. I started gardening, learning new recipes, taking painting classes at the senior center. I made friends, traveled alone sometimes. I discovered an incredible freedom in being an older woman who doesn't have to explain herself to anyone. I looked toward the sea, breathed in the salty air, and felt the warm afternoon sun on my skin. I never thought at 67 I'd have to start over." "Why not?" Zulma smiled. "Life doesn't come with an expiration date for dreams or fresh beginnings." My plan was nearly complete. Only the most important step remained: the will. Attorney James Miller reminded me that American law doesn't allow a child to be fully disinherited, but there were still ways to ensure my wishes would be respected, that my remaining savings wouldn't be wasted. James reviewed the papers and said, "You still have Richard's life insurance untouched, And that piece of land you two bought decades ago was just reappraised. It's worth far more than you imagined." He looked at me over his glasses, his voice firm. "Teresa, you are not nearly as poor as your daughter thinks. It's time Amanda learned the truth. That land had been purchased because Richard said it reminded him of the farm where he grew up. I had thought it was just nostalgia. But he had been right. A highway was built nearby, followed by upscale housing developments, then a shopping center. Suddenly, that forgotten plot had become prime real estate hunted by developers. Its value stunned me more than I had ever dared to dream. With these assets, you could live comfortably the rest of your life. You could buy a house, travel, fulfill dreams you never had the chance to live. You don't need to depend on anyone, let alone stay in that guest room," James concluded. My voice caught. "I sold my house to help Amanda and David, not just for financial reasons. I believed it would bring us closer, that we'd have a family again. After Richard died, the loneliness crushed me. I thought living near my daughter would fill that emptiness, but instead, I became nothing but a burden, something to be tolerated." 3 months passed since the night I heard that whisper. 3 months of quiet preparation, packing away old photographs, keepsakes, books I had carried all my life. Day by day, I removed pieces of myself from that house without their noticing. Amanda and David still treated me as an inconvenient but necessary presence. I still pretended not to hear their sighs or see their looks of annoyance when I forgot something. One afternoon, while folding clothes, I found Amanda's jewelry box open on the bed. Among the necklaces and earrings, I immediately recognized the sapphire brooch that had belonged to my mother, the one I had saved to give Amanda on a special occasion. "Amanda, are you wearing Grandma's brooch?" She stood in the doorway, phone in hand. "Oh, that old brooch? I sold it to Teresa at work. She collects vintage pieces." It felt like a slap. You sold it? That was your grandmother's keepsake." Amanda rolled her eyes. "Mom, it was just an old brooch. Teresa paid a good price, and we needed money to fix the bathroom. I don't even remember Grandma wearing it." In that moment, something inside me broke completely. It wasn't just jewelry, it was a piece of our family history, discarded without a thought. I nodded silently, but my resolve only grew stronger. "That Thursday night," I announced. "Tomorrow, I need both of you home early. We have an important family matter." Amanda frowned. "Mom, I've got deadlines. Can't it wait until the weekend?" "No, tomorrow at 2 o'clock. Attorney James will be here. I need you both present." Mentioning James's name was intentional. I knew it would spark their curiosity. David, for once, lifted his eyes from his phone. "What's going on, Mrs. Teresa? You'll find out tomorrow." That night, I slept more peacefully than I had in months. No more uncertainty. I had a plan, and I had taken back control of my life. The next morning, I carefully chose a navy blue dress Richard had always loved, applied a touch of lipstick, and pulled my silver hair into a simple bun. Amanda eyed me curiously. "You look different today, Mom. What's going on?" "Not yet, dear. But you'll see." The enigmatic tone made her frown. Even David, surprisingly present at the breakfast table, pretended to read the paper while clearly listening in. "That lawyer today, what's it about?" he asked. "Family matters, David." "As I said, you'll see this afternoon." The morning dragged on. Amanda claimed to be working from home, but I noticed her restless glances at the clock. David stayed too, unlike most Fridays when he usually disappeared for so-called meetings that I suspected were bar outings. At exactly 2 o'clock, the doorbell rang. Amanda opened it. James stepped inside, carrying his familiar leather briefcase. And behind him, causing both Amanda and David to stiffen, were my sister Regina, dressed elegantly in a gray suit, and Zulma, radiant and smiling. "Mom, what is this? Who are these people?" Amanda asked, clearly uneasy. "Sit down first," I said calmly. "We have much to discuss." In the living room, James opened his briefcase and laid out a stack of documents. The atmosphere turned tense immediately. David sat upright, eyes wide. He shifted nervously on the sofa, fidgeting with his hands. Amanda forced a smile, glancing back and forth between me and the unfamiliar guests. Before beginning officially, I spoke, feeling the weight of each word. "First, I want to thank you, Amanda, and you too, David, for letting me stay these past months. I know it hasn't been easy having a burden like me in your home." Amanda's face went pale instantly. She knew. She knew I had heard everything that night. David swallowed hard, unable to meet my eyes. Amanda began. "Mom." I raised my hand gently to stop her. "No need to explain, dear. Words have power, and yours helped me make a decision I've been postponing for years." Attorney James Miller cleared his throat, stepping into his formal role. "We are here today for the reading and signing of the new will of Mrs. Teresa Collins, as well as to communicate some important decisions she has recently made." Then I began revealing, piece by piece, the puzzle I had secretly put together. I told them about the money I had saved from selling my house, about Richard's untouched life insurance, about the land in the suburbs whose value had soared after a shopping center was built nearby. "Your father and I always planned ahead, Amanda. Do you remember how he insisted on saving for the future, even in the hardest times? What you didn't know is that those investments multiplied over the years." Amanda's eyes widened as James read the figures. It was far more than she had ever imagined, far more than the money from the house I had given them months earlier. "But why did you sell your house and move in with us if you had all that money?" Amanda asked, confused and upset. "Because I wanted to be close to you, my only daughter. Because I naively believed that after your father's death, we could grow closer, build new bonds. And because I wanted to test something." David finally spoke, his voice trembling. Test what?" "To see who you really were, when you thought I had nothing left to give but my presence." The silence that followed was heavy, almost suffocating. Regina held my hand, giving me strength. I went on, pointing to the folder James had laid on the table. "The will I signed this morning establishes certain conditions that need to be shared." James resumed, his voice grave and deliberate, reading each clause. "A portion of my estate, the legal share owed to Amanda, would be kept in a trust, accessible only in annual installments. The remainder would be divided 3 ways: 1 share for Regina, the sister with whom I was rebuilding my bond, 1 share for the foundation to support vulnerable seniors that Zulma and I were creating, and 1 share for myself to fund my new life." "New life?" Amanda repeated, finally realizing the scope of what was happening. "Yes, dear. Today I'm moving out. Zulma has kindly invited me to share her coastal home. I'll spend the years ahead in peace, writing the memoir I've always postponed, planting herbs on the balcony, walking the beach at dawn." At that moment, James looked straight at Amanda and said words I would never forget. "Miss Amanda, your mother has never been and will never be a burden. She is, in fact, one of the most resilient and intelligent women I've ever known. And today, she is teaching you a lesson I hope you carry for the rest of your life. The true worth of a person has never been in the money they hold, but in the character they show when they believe no one is watching." Amanda broke down in tears, not out of remorse, but out of shame mixed with the bitter realization of a lost opportunity. David sat stunned, his mind racing over the numbers he had just heard, surely regretting plans that would never come to pass. "Mom, please," Amanda choked out. "We don't need to take it this far. We can talk. We can work this out as a family." I smiled gently. There was no resentment in my heart, only the clarity that age and disappointment bring. "Daughter, some words can never be taken back once spoken. Some wounds never truly heal. I'm not doing this to punish you both, but to free myself, to live the rest of my life with dignity." David finally stammered, finding his voice. "Mrs. Teresa, you can't do this to us. We still have plans." He stopped short, realizing what he was about to admit. I finished for him softly. "You're in debt, aren't you?" David's face went pale. I continued. "I know. The loan for the kitchen renovation, the maxed-out credit cards, even the gambling debt you've been hiding from Amanda." Amanda turned to her husband, horrified. What is she talking about? "David?" Before he could answer, I spoke. "You both think I'm old, outdated, but you forget it was I who managed the family's finances for decades. I recognize the signs of a household drowning in debt," James added, pulling another file from his briefcase. "Mrs. Teresa also requested a discreet financial audit. This is a detailed report of your debts. They total nearly 70% of this apartment's value." Amanda nearly fainted. David looked like a cornered animal. "I could pay those debts," I said calmly, "but I won't." "Because you want to see us suffer?" David shouted. "No, because some lessons can only be learned the hard way, because money given freely is never valued, and because I believe the two of you are perfectly capable of solving your own problems if you stop looking for shortcuts." I rose, signaling the meeting was over. James gathered the signed papers. Regina and Zulma stood beside me like silent guardians of my decision. "My bags are ready, a car is waiting outside. I've left the guest room key on the table." Amanda jumped up, tears streaking her face. For a moment I saw the image of a 5-year-old girl crying after scraping her knee. My heart ached, but I stood firm. "Mom," she whispered, "that night, I didn't mean what I said. I was stressed. From work, from money." "I know, daughter. Few of us ever mean the cruel things we say, but once spoken, words take on a life of their own. They change people. They change relationships." I walked over, kissed Amanda's forehead as I had when she was a child. "I love you, and I will always love you. But love does not mean becoming a doormat, nor giving up one's dignity. One day, when you are older, perhaps you will understand." We left the apartment. Regina pulled my small suitcase. I heard David mutter, "What about this apartment? What about the money we put into renovations?" I didn't turn back to answer. Some questions don't deserve a response. In the car, I sat in silence, a swirl of emotions inside me. Sorrow for what could have been, relief for what lay ahead. Regina held my hand the entire way, sharing the silence. Zulma occasionally pointed out the window, excitedly talking about the projects we would do together. "You know," Zulma said as we passed a deserted beach, "when my husband died, I thought my life was over. I drowned in tears, waiting for the phone to ring with news from my faraway children. Until one night, the power went out. I lit candles and stepped onto the balcony. For the first time in months, I saw the stars, felt the breeze, heard the night sounds, and I realized I was still alive." Her words struck something deep inside me. I too had merely existed, not truly lived, since the day Richard passed. I sighed. Starting over in my 60s is terrifying. More terrifying is never starting over, Regina said firmly, squeezing my hand. Outside the window, the cityscape slowly gave way to the green of the suburbs. For the first time in years, the unknown no longer felt frightening. It felt like hope. 3 hours later, we arrived at Zulma's seaside home. The house was old but well cared for, facing the ocean, with red roses swaying in the coastal breeze. At the entrance, a handmade wooden sign read, "This place is for those who choose to begin again." My room was spacious and airy, with a large window overlooking the ocean. Zulma had placed fresh flowers in a vase and stacked books on the nightstand, the very ones I had once said I wanted to reread. "I hope you'll be comfortable," she said, helping me unpack. "It's perfect," I replied, gratitude flooding my heart. "Don't say more than I deserve." "You deserve this and more." She laughed, her bangles jingling, then clapped her hands cheerfully. "Now, let's have dinner." I made the herb-roasted fish I promised. Afterward, we'll sit on the porch, watch the stars, and plan our foundation for seniors. I've got 1,000 ideas. That night, under a starry sky with a glass of white wine in hand, I knew my life was truly beginning again. We started planning the future. Regina, staying a few days with us, suggested partnerships with organizations she knew. Zulma had ideas for art, music, and writing workshops. I thought about offering classes in cooking, gardening, and basic financial management. "Let's call it the New Beginning Project," Zulma suggested, to remind us it's never too late for a new life. I fell asleep to the sound of waves breaking on the shore, a steady rhythm whispering, "Keep going, keep going." In the days that followed, the phone rang many times. Amanda was calling. At first, I didn't answer. I needed time to sort through my thoughts, to strengthen my resolve. Eventually, I picked up. The conversation was full of heavy silences and unfinished sentences. "How's the new house, Mom?" my daughter asked. "It's not my house, it's Zulma's. But it's cozy. There's a window overlooking the sea." "Are you happy there?" The question caught me off guard. Amanda rarely cared about my feelings. "I'm learning to be happy again," I answered honestly. I heard a sigh on the other end. "Mom, I'm so sorry for everything." "I know, daughter. Do you think one day you'll forgive me?" I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of the question. "It's not about forgiveness, Amanda. It's about moving forward. I'm trying, and I hope you are too." Time passed, weeks turned into months. My life with Zulma found a pleasant rhythm. We rose early, drank coffee on the porch watching the sea. 3 times a week we went to the city's senior center. I taught cooking, Zulma taught painting. On free afternoons, we worked on grant applications, made contacts, wrote proposals for the foundation. Regina visited often, bringing news from the city and sometimes updates about Amanda and David. They had sold the old apartment, moving into a smaller place more in line with their finances. David had finally found a job, not the big deals he once boasted about, but stable and honest. "They're learning to adapt," Regina said. "It's hard but necessary." Amanda called me once a week, usually on Sundays. The conversations grew less tense, more genuine. She never asked for money, never mentioned the will. Instead, she spoke about her job, about the therapy course she had started, about learning to cook something she had never bothered with when I was there to do it for her. A few months later, I received a letter from Amanda. It wasn't a plea for reconciliation or an attempt to overturn the will. She wrote, "Mom, my apartment has been sold. David and I divorced. I realized I had turned into a stranger, calculating, materialistic. I'm in therapy now, trying to understand where I lost my way. I don't expect you to forgive me, maybe never. I just want you to know that night, the words I said haunt me every single day. Not because I lost money, but because I lost the chance to truly know you, a remarkable woman. I read that letter over and over. I didn't reply right away. Some wounds need time to heal. Meanwhile, my life blossomed. Zulma and I got the official registration for our foundation. We launched a pilot project, free classes for the elderly in the community. Success came immediately. Dozens of people showed up, eager to learn, to make friends, to feel valuable again. See? Zulma said after the first week. Look at how many lives we're touching. And to think you could still be sitting in that guest room, feeling useless. I laughed, remembering myself just half a year earlier, hurt, insecure, lost. Sometimes you have to lose something to find a better version of yourself. My memoir also progressed, page by page. It wasn't a traditional autobiography, but a collection of stories about women I had known. My mother, my aunts, friends, colleagues, ordinary women who did extraordinary things. Women like Zulma, like Regina, like the woman I was learning to become. A year passed. One sunny Sunday afternoon, while watering my balcony herb garden, basil, rosemary, mint, lemon balm, I noticed a strange car pull up outside the gate. A familiar figure stepped out with a small suitcase. It was Amanda. We looked at each other from a distance. There was no running into each other's arms like in a movie. The distance remained an emotional distance that needed to be bridged with truth and with time. "May I come in?" she asked from the doorway. I hesitated only for a moment before answering. "The door is open." And indeed, the door was open. Not just the house, but the door to reconciliation. It wouldn't be easy, it wouldn't be quick. There would be many things to say, many tears to shed, many truths to face. But as Amanda walked through the garden toward the balcony where I waited, I felt maybe, just maybe, we could build something new from the ashes. Zulma appeared at the door, smiling discreetly, then quietly went back inside, leaving space for the two of us. "You look different," Amanda said as she came closer. "More radiant." "Freedom does that to people," I replied, pointing to the chair beside me. She sat down, eyes fixed on the ocean. "It's beautiful." "Yes, it is. Every morning I give thanks to wake up and see this. It's a daily reminder of how vast the world is, of all the possibilities." We stayed silent for a few minutes, just listening to the waves and the sea breeze. It wasn't uncomfortable silence, but contemplative. "I read your letter," I said softly. "I'm sorry about your marriage." Amanda shrugged. "I was sad at first, but now I understand we were together for the wrong reasons. David wanted status, comfort, a life we couldn't afford. And I was so focused on chasing things, keeping up appearances, that I forgot how to be human. I forgot how to be your daughter." My eyes blurred, but I didn't cry. "And how are you now? Financially? Emotionally?" "I'm okay. Better than I ever thought. I rented a small apartment, but it's mine. I'm saving, slowly paying off my debts. Work is going well. I finally got the promotion I deserved. Therapy is helping too." I nodded, feeling both relieved and proud. "That's good, daughter." She hesitated. "I didn't come to ask for money or to beg you to change the will. I came because I miss you, the real you, not the version I once tried to force into my fake, polished life." Tears glistened in her eyes. "You were right that day. I never valued your presence, only what you could give me. and when I thought you had nothing left to offer, I saw you as a burden." "That's true," I whispered, "and I regret it every day." I reached out, wiping a tear from her cheek. "Do you remember what your grandmother used to say? Don't regret yesterday. Don't fear tomorrow. Live only today." She was wise, like you, she whispered. I smiled, my heart lighter. "Would you like to meet Zulma and see the foundation? We're helping dozens of seniors here. I'm sure she'd love to show you the painting workshops." "I'd love that," Amanda said, smiling her first real smile in a long time. That evening, Amanda stayed for dinner. Zulma made her famous herb-roasted fish. We talked about everything and nothing. It wasn't perfect, there was still tension, wounds that would take time to heal. But it was a start. Before Amanda left, she was staying at a nearby inn for a few days. I asked, "Why did you really come after all this time?" You'd looked up at the starry sky, then at me. "Because I finally understood the lesson you tried to teach me all my life. True wealth isn't in what we own, but in who we become. And I want to become someone you can be proud of. I've always been proud of you, Amanda. I only wished you could feel proud of yourself, without needing things to feel worthy." She nodded, her eyes shining. "I'm learning, Mom. Slowly, but I'm learning." As Amanda's car disappeared down the road, Zulma appeared beside me on the porch, gently wrapping her arm around my shoulder. "She'll be fine," she said. "You gave her the greatest gift a mother can give a child." "And what gift is that?" I asked. "The chance to grow, to face consequences, to find her own strength." I looked up at the stars, thinking of her words. Maybe she was right. Maybe the most loving decision I ever made was to walk away, allowing Amanda to find her own path, even if it meant stumbling. In the months that followed, Amanda visited often. Each visit was a small step toward healing our bond. She even began volunteering at the foundation on weekends, showing a natural gift for listening and making the seniors feel important. "She takes after you," Zulma remarked. "That ability to make people feel heard." "She always had that," I replied, my heart swelling with pride. "She just lost her way for a while." One visit, Amanda brought a surprise. My mother's sapphire brooch, a keepsake I thought was gone forever. "How did you get this?" I asked, overwhelmed as I held the familiar piece. I told Teresa, the coworker who bought it, about its true meaning. She understood and gave it back. She said some things just can't be measured by money. I clutched the brooch, tears welling in my eyes. This time, it wasn't just the revival of a keepsake, it was a sign that Amanda and I were also finding our way back to each other. I hugged my daughter tightly, feeling another piece of the puzzle fall into place, another part of our relationship being restored. On the last page of my memoir, finished on my 69th birthday, I wrote, "Because in the end, we are not defined by our mistakes, but by the courage to admit them and the determination to do things differently from that moment on." At 69, I learned that it's never too late to rise, to begin again, to teach others, and most importantly, to remind ourselves that no one is a burden when they carry their own dignity. And as I watched Amanda, my daughter, begin to change, I realized the most precious legacy I could leave her wasn't in the will I signed that morning, but in the example of a woman who refused to be diminished. A woman who found strength in adversity, and even when hurt, kept the door of forgiveness open, because not every story ends with revenge or abandonment. Some stories, the deepest, the truest ones, end with opportunity, simply the opportunity for a new chapter. And that, my dear daughter, is the true inheritance I leave you, not money or property, but the certainty that we are stronger, more resilient, and more valuable than we ever imagined. And that never, ever are we a burden when we carry our own worth. Teresa's story makes me reflect on something we often forget. Family bonds are not always perfect, but from those cracks, we can learn to stand tall, to hold on to dignity, and to open the door to healing. Perhaps the most precious thing parents can leave their children isn't wealth, but an example of living daring to face the truth, daring to change, and daring to love without becoming a burden. And you? What do you believe is the greatest legacy someone can leave their family? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if you'd like to journey with me through more stories like this, where we learn together and draw lessons for our own lives, be sure to follow so you won't miss what's to come.